The new version of Microsoft Outlook, a topic that has created conversation and controversy because I know many of you have went ahead and turned on that option in Outlook.
One morning, millions of people sat down at their computers and opened their email. And something was different. Not broken, not gone, just different. At least that's what it looked like. The app they had used every day, in some cases for over 20 years, had been replaced. Quietly. A small banner at the top of the screen. Try the new Outlook. And then, not long after, no button at all. No choice. No opt-out. Just the new version, whether you wanted it or not. But this wasn't a software update. What Microsoft had actually done, what they were still doing, went much deeper than a redesign, and most people using it had no idea. If you're new here, In Retrospect covers the decisions, secrets, and turning points that quietly reshape our world. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. To understand what changed, you have to understand what Outlook was. Not just an email app. Outlook was, for decades, the backbone of professional life. Calendars, contacts, task lists, entire workflows in law firms, hospitals, schools, government offices, built around one assumption that Outlook would behave a certain way every time, every day. It worked offline. It stored your data locally. You could leave the country, get on a 14-hour flight with no Wi-Fi, and still read every email you'd ever received. Still draft replies. Still check your calendar going back 5 years. It was yours, installed on your machine, under your control. And for Microsoft, that was exactly the problem. Through the 2010s, Microsoft watched the world shift beneath its feet. Google had Gmail. Slack was starting to replace email entirely, and a new generation of users didn't want desktop software anymore. They wanted something that worked everywhere. On their phone, their laptop, their tablet. Something that lived in the browser. Something that updated itself without IT having to manage it. But not everyone moved at the same pace, and Microsoft was paying attention. Slowly, the company began to pivot. Azure became the center of gravity. Microsoft 365 replaced the old Office model. Teams replaced Skype. OneDrive replaced local storage. Everything moved to the cloud. The vision was simple. Everything connected. Everything synced. Everything always online. From Microsoft's perspective, it was perfect. And that's where the problem was, because one piece didn't fully fit that vision. One piece millions of people still relied on the old way, the desktop version of Outlook, the real one. The one that had barely changed in its core philosophy since 1997. That was the last holdout, and Microsoft had already decided what to do with it. The new Outlook, officially called Outlook for Windows, looks at first glance like a modest refresh. Cleaner lines, rounded corners, the same design language you see across Windows 11. Nothing about it suggests that anything fundamental has changed. At least, not on the surface. Because underneath, it's something completely different. The old Outlook was a native application. It lived on your machine. It stored your data locally, your email, your contacts, your calendar, everything right there on your device. It worked without the internet. It worked on your terms. The new Outlook doesn't. It's not really a desktop app. It's a web app, wrapped to look like one. The same version that runs in your browser, loading your data from the cloud, processing everything on Microsoft's servers. requiring a connection just to function properly. And once you see the shift, you start to realize something. This isn't just a new version of Outlook, it's a completely different way of using it. And when Microsoft made it clear that the old version, the one people had relied on for years, would eventually disappear, that's when the reaction changed. It started with small things. People opened the new Outlook and something felt off. A setting they'd used for years, gone. A plugin they relied on every day, missing. The little things, the things that made their workflow work, just weren't there anymore. They searched for them, tried to fix it, assumed it was a bug, but it wasn't. Those tools, the ones businesses had quietly built entire systems around, didn't work the same way anymore. Not because Microsoft removed them, but because the new Outlook couldn't support them. And that's when the questions started. Because under the old system, your emails were yours. They lived on your machine. You backed them up, you controlled them. But in the new Outlook, everything moves through Microsoft's cloud. Your email, your calendar, your contacts. All processed on servers you don't own, under terms you didn't really read, in a system that only works as long as you're connected, as long as you're paying, and slowly people started to realize what had changed. Because this wasn't just an update, this was a subscription. Because here's what many users started to realize, slowly, uncomfortably. They didn't own the new Outlook. They rented it. The old Outlook came with Office. You bought it once. It sat on your computer. It worked, whether Microsoft existed or not. The new Outlook doesn't. It's a part of Microsoft 365, a subscription. If you stop paying, access changes. If Microsoft changes the terms, access changes. The software doesn't just sit on your machine anymore. It sits on Microsoft's infrastructure, available to you as long as the relationship continues. For some users, that felt like a small inconvenience. But for others, especially businesses that had built years of systems around something they thought they owned, it felt like something was being taken from them. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, quietly, like water rising. Microsoft didn't do this by accident. What looks from the outside like a confusing product decision is actually something much more deliberate, part of a much larger system, years in the making. Because once everything runs through the cloud, Microsoft doesn't just provide the software anymore. They see everything. How you use it, what you click, what you ignore, how long you stay in your inbox, when you're most active, and that kind of data is incredibly valuable. But it only exists if your software is a service, not something you own, something you access. And once your software works that way, it can change at any time, without you installing anything, without you choosing anything. And it already has. And then there's Copilot. Microsoft's AI assistant is being built into everything. Word, Excel, Teams, and now Outlook. But Copilot doesn't work with local software. It can't read data sitting on your hard drive. It needs everything in the cloud, connected, centralized, accessible. The shift to the new Outlook wasn't just about modernizing an old app. It was about preparing the entire system for something else. A version of Microsoft's ecosystem where AI sits at the center. Reading your emails, summarizing your meetings, suggesting what to do next. And that vision only works if your data is in one place, their place. And once everything is there, it becomes very hard to leave. Because this isn't just a Microsoft story. It's the direction the entire industry has been moving in, from software you own to services you subscribe to, from products on your machine to platforms in the cloud. from tools that work for you to systems that keep you connected and dependent. Microsoft isn't the only company doing this. Apple, Google, Adobe. They've all made the same shift because subscriptions are predictable. They create lock-in. They make switching harder. And over time, they change something much bigger than the software itself. They change your relationship with it. Because what does it actually mean to stop owning the tools you use every day? There's a particular kind of frustration that doesn't come from something being broken, but from something being changed without your consent. The people most upset about the new Outlook weren't afraid of technology. They were people who had built something, workflows, habits, muscle memory, entire systems around a piece of software they thought they could rely on. And for the first time, many of them realized it wasn't really theirs. It could be updated, altered, replaced at any time, for any reason. The button that said "Try the new Outlook" felt polite. It implied a choice, but the direction was never really in question. The old version is being retired. The new one is taking its place, and with it, something deeper is shifting, from local to remote, from owned to licensed, from yours to theirs. There's a version of this story where that works. The new Outlook improves. Copilot saves time. The cloud makes everything easier, and over time, the frustration fades. That version may even be true. But there's another version worth sitting with. The version where we stop noticing what we've given up. Where the shift from owning to renting happens so gradually that we never really choose it. Where switching feels like too much effort. Subscriptions renew automatically, and the terms change quietly in the background. Where the software stops feeling like something we use and starts feeling like something that happens to us. Microsoft didn't hide what they were doing. It was all there. Announcements, roadmaps, product updates. But those things have a way of disappearing into the noise. And so one morning, millions of people sat down at their computers, opened their email, and something was different. And most of them clicked OK and went back to work. In retrospect, stories behind the decisions, secrets, and turning points that shape our world.